Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm CJ.
And I'm Chip.
And we're here today to let you have it straight. As you may or may not know, there was a big joint meeting at the City Hall at Government Center this Monday. And that meeting was rather interesting. It's the first time I've seen in a long time that the school committee and the city council met in conjunction with the mayor. So we have to ask ourselves, what's the big deal, right? Well, the big deal is we're broke. Isn't that news? We're broke. We have no money. And it was rather interesting to see how this worked out. And they came up with $16 million, $16.7, I believe, million that we're short in our budgets between the school committee, and being the school department, and the city budget. But that doesn't include the fact that we're $4 million short in the water department for the CSO project. So that puts us at $20 million short, not including other shortfalls we may have in other enterprise accounts. So it's interesting to see that we're so broke, but we can give out huge pay raises, which also came up at this meeting. And it made for a rather punch and dodge campaign between the city council and the mayor and the school committee and the city council. The only person that came out, I think, showing his true colors was City Council President Joe Camara, who went to bat for everybody at every moment, defending the world. I guess he's Superman. So it's going to be interesting to see what we bring you today in this show. What do you think about this, Chip? Is this going to be an interesting week or what?
Oh, it's going to be an interesting year. The rest of the fiscal year ought to be good because I have to remind everybody, I think you heard it here on Spindle City Straight Talk first, that the city's been broke. I think we've been singing that for a long time. At the last budgetary hearing at the City Council, I made a presentation which basically said that budget was nothing more than a fabrication. And obviously, we're seeing that, and we're seeing it manifested here. The city is anywhere from $16 to $20 million in the hole by their estimates. I think if all the bills came due, we would find that we are, more than bankrupt. We are beyond bankrupt. If there's some, the fiscal mismanagement in this community over the last 3 years has been just mind-boggling. So all we've seen is pay raises and assistance, and what have we got for that? We've gotten reductions in public safety and essential services, and ultimately, when you dance, you've got to pay the band. So I guess it's time for Mayor Flanagan to pay the band.
And I'm sure Bragg is not collecting the money for this. Interesting that you should mention about pay raises for administrators and whatnot, because that did come up, and it came up very clearly when people were talking about shortfalls, and the mayor was asked, why did we give out all these raises if we don't have the money? And spoiler alert, the mayor turned around and said, we were obligated by contract to give these raises. But the funny part about it was, as was brought up by Councilor Pereira, none of these people have a contract. These must be written by the crayon in the law department, I think, saying that she also benefited one of those pay raises. So we're going to blame a non-existent contract on pay raises for everybody to keep them all in a job. When we go back to some of the pay raises that have been made, we go back to our old city treasurer, Aya Capone, who turned around and said, I need a raise. And he turned around and said, but I'm not staying. I plan on leaving, but you got to give me a raise. And then he proceeded to leave and then stay on as a consultant at the same pay. And we hired a treasurer at the same pay. And then we hired another consultant at the same pay. So we have 4 treasurers, one of them being the treasurer officially and the other 3 being consultants, all making the same pay. And this is how we do political payback. And that's why we're broke. Meanwhile, we have secretaries in City Hall still making $27,000 a year and can barely feed their families. And they do more work than anyone else. $16.7 million. A fire department at 153 firefighters. The mayor commented to the Herald News this week that he has met with the fire chief and a former district chief of the Fall River Fire Department. And their job is to put men back on the trucks. But 200 is not a realistic number. I have to ask myself, how can you make that statement? And who is this district chief? I wonder. Do you have any idea, Chip?
Yeah, I do. And I am going to tell everyone who that district chief is. It is I. And I did meet with the mayor, but not to, and we didn't discuss anything specific. He reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in coming on as a consultant, and I told him that before I did, and I made no commitment to do any such thing, just for the sake of historical background, a very long time ago, when I was the president of the Firefighters Union, I presented to the city council a 5-year reorganization plan because we had anticipated that ultimately, budgets and the costs of doing business were going to escalate to the point where manning levels would not be able to be sustained at the rate they were. And the fact is that I proposed a plan that had a short-term and long-term goals, which would be to restructure in a manner that would allow us to operate with less men than we had at the time and operate efficiently, but that would take over 5 years to attain. And also, there has to be a baseline. And I will go on record, I have not accepted the position, and I made it very clear to the mayor that before I do, I have to talk to the chief and the fire union, and I am not working to do anything but improve the position we're in. And I will go on record here, as I did with him, to say 153 men is totally unacceptable. That we cannot protect this city with 153 men. And if we take people out short term and put them on the trucks, it's only a Band-Aid because other services will suffer. If we remove people from, let's say, for the sake of argument, from the Fire Prevention Bureau, that means if you're looking for inspections or plan reviews, it's going to be a much slower process, and those actually generate money. Plans reviews and issuing plans and permits actually generate money. So there's no simple solution. It's a very complex issue, but the only thing that can resolve this issue is if everyone makes a commitment, and makes a commitment that we all understand that 153 is not a viable number. It will jeopardize the safety of the firefighters. It will jeopardize the safety and the property of the citizens of Fall River. And that we have to make every effort to prioritize fire safety and use our tax dollars, as I've said numerous times before, to make sure that we have police and fire on the job. We should not be giving out pay raises and hiring assistants for people who got a pay raise and then have to do less work while we say that we don't have enough money to hire firefighters. Now, he's had 3 years under the SAFER grant to find some money, and apparently we're having trouble. And obviously we're going to have trouble when we're $16 million in the hole. But when you're in a situation like this, you have to have priorities. The number one priority has to be public safety. And I will say it here, and you heard it first. I will not accept a position if that isn't understood. That 153 is not a number that I can live with, that any fire professional worth his salt with a city that has the fire hazard and configuration that we do, it can, and that we have to move off that number now. We may not get to 200, but we have to move off 153, and we have to make a commitment to get to an acceptable number as quickly as possible and do whatever it takes to do it. And if I take this task on, it will only be if everybody understands where I'm coming from. And where I'm coming from is, I want the firefighters on the trucks and the people of this city to be as safe as possible.
You know, Chip, just out of full disclosure, I think some of our viewers don't really know who you are and what your background experience has been. I know that you were a bulldog for the fire department and the fire union for a long time. I mean, you made sure that people were held to a standard, but a lot of our viewers don't know that. So it might be interesting if you could just give us a little bit of your background so they know why you were called upon.
Well, I had 25 years as a chief, 24 at permanent rank, and I had a year's worth of acting as a chief before I made permanent district chief. I have 25 years experience as a firefighter, all of which was on the line fighting fires. So I have 25 years as a chief, and I have another 10 years or so as an officer, lieutenant, and captain before I made district chief. I was also president of the firefighters union for 24 years, and during that time, I went to binding arbitration with the city twice and beat them. I also processed hundreds of grievances, which we won most of. So I have a collective bargaining background. I understand the process it takes to reorganize. I've proposed different reorganization plans. I've also dealt with the 1710 Manning standard intimately. So I have basically my entire career. I am a professional. I was a professional firefighter, and I was a chief officer. And I was a chief officer in the city of Fall River, and I intimately understand the necessities that we need to fight fires in this community. I fought every fire from Firestone when I first got on to the last conflagration in North America, the Notre Dame fire. I was the chief on the fire front at Kerr Mill. I have fought every major fire in this city for almost 40 years. So I think that my ability to speak to the fire needs and necessities of Fall River are basically the reason that the mayor reached out to me.
That must be the first smart thing he's done. I'm not trying to be, facetious or mean here, but I mean, you're a man with experience and knowledge, and you know what you're doing, and the mayor called upon you for help. I mean, I find that a little interesting because he's got a lot of other monkeys working for him.
Well, I think a lot has to do when he first ran for mayor. He did meet with me, and I gave him that 5-year plan. Nothing was done about the 5-year plan, but he was aware that I have, basically worked on a reorganization plan. And the reality is, I think that, we have to give, as somebody said, we never give anybody, I have to give him kudos that he actually wants to make an attempt to reach, because obviously, I've spent a lot of time, being philosophically opposed to many of the things he's done. But that being said, the most important thing to me in this community is safety. It always has been. It was basically my life's work. And I can put aside political differences, and I can put aside philosophical differences if we're all going to be on the same page and work toward improving the safety of this city and improving the safety of the firefighters.
Well, I think that's a good point, because we've always been told, I don't know how many times, that, we're negative, we don't want to work together, we just want to point out the problems. But I think here we're showing that, you especially are going forwards to work out these problems and to work for the people of Fall River, and to work for yourself as well, to make sure that you're safe. I mean, you're a property owner, I'm a property owner, and I mean, we just saw the fire on Fulton Street. We have one woman who died, another one who is injured in the hospital, and I mean, what would that have been like had we been at 153 firefighters? I got to ask that question.
Yeah, and that's the reason I said that it was mandatory that I met with the fire chief, because obviously the fire chief and Fire Chief Viveris is, I worked with him for a very long time. He spent a lot of time on the line fighting fires as a district chief. He's a very competent guy. He's working on a reorganization. I want to make sure that we're both on the same page and we're all working together, including the union. Because the reality is that we have to put politics aside. We have to stop posturing We need to, everybody understand how important it is. And the fact is that, budgetary concerns are budgetary concerns, but the first priority has to be tax dollars have to go first to public safety. We're paying $19 and change to paint houses in the Highland District. And I'm sure that people really would rather pay $20 toward fire and police. The fact is that what our tax dollars go to is an integral part of what makes this city what it is. And we have lost our way with that. And it seems as though our budget has been committed to everything but fire safety. And what we have to do is everybody has to accept that, and we have to change this. We have to go back to a time where the first thing in a budget is public safety. Just as in our house, we have to make sure we pay the mortgage so we have a house.
Yes, it's I know it's difficult for the city right now. They have a lot of financial problems, not only on the city side, but on the school department side. And the meeting that they held on Monday, everyone says was a good first effort. But all of a sudden, on Tuesday, they started doing a lot of backstepping and a lot of backpedaling. And we looked at the fact that they had this meeting, which was all posturing. I mean, people came out and said they have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, Kathy Ann put up a little display showing the 2014 budget, the fiscal 2015 budget, and the change in it. And of course, there's an increase. But people were posturing that nobody knew what was going on. And they're all saying this is a great informational point of view. But nothing was said. No specifics were given. It was kind of just like, hi, look at me, I'm here on camera, and I'm going to say what I need to say. And important questions weren't answered. Is this more political posturing that we're seeing? It's very interesting to see this. Because one of the big things that came out was not only on the city side are we short, but on the school department side, we didn't even meet mandatory minimum spendings. We're like $1 million short there. And now they're saying it's almost $2 million short because the school bus and the transportation contracts went up. If you make a contract, isn't that what you're contracted for? All of a sudden we can go up in money? I mean, does that make any sense to you?
No, because, that's an old, even to get back to your original point when you talked about them having contracts when they don't, that's really an irrelevant point because the fact is, if they have a contract, they negotiated it with the city. They work for the city. So if those pay raises, whether mandated by a contract or are given out by the same entity, the city.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's just political maneuvering and attempting to kind of throw everybody off. That's a very old tactic. We have such a big budget. We deal with such large numbers. People get lost in the shuffle. This is one of the reasons that I've always said that we need a full and independent audit of the city. We don't need a budget that's so complicated that you need a CPA from Ernst & Young to come down and interpret the budget. The city should have a very simple line item budget that anybody in the city can walk into the city hall and access and say, this is how much money we spend for firefighters, this is how much money we spend for water, this is how much money, there shouldn't be 25 different healthcare accounts, there shouldn't be, it shouldn't be some big mystery. But if they keep it a mystery, it's a lot harder to find, as you always say, it makes it a lot more difficult to follow the money.
Exactly. And you have to follow the money, whether it be in a political campaign or in the city budget. And you know that too because you've seen how money gets shuffled around and you found a couple of $1 million a couple of times that was missing. And you had to make a big stink about it as well. So we're looking at this and we're saying this was a big show. Dan Rigo came out and asked for an independent audit of the city finances by the state auditor. He asked for that, came out and asked for it. Danny Robillard has been asking for that independent audit of the city budget for many years. There's a lot of people in the city that want it. Why is the administration so opposed to it? That's the big question I have.
Well, I think if and I don't even agree with the state auditor doing it. I would like to see an independent auditor. I would like to see a company like Ernst & Young or someone like that who has done. Actually, the auditor who did our audit when we found a couple $1 million in a healthcare account that had been misappropriated or misplaced or whatever euphemism you want to use. The man's name was Jerry McGovern. He was one of their senior auditors at Ernst & Young, which is one of the most reputable firms in the nation. He actually did a $1 trillion audit of the entire state of Kentucky. What we need is an organization that doesn't have any, you can't influence them politically. You can't, and they're going to do an in-depth, not a peripheral audit, an in-depth audit and a forensic audit to find out where every penny is. And I think that all administrations have been very resistant to this, because I think if that is ever done, the reality of the fact that we are basically bankrupt is going to be very, very clear. That we are so deep in debt, we have deficits spent with our bonds, that if these things ever come due, or half of them come due, at a time when we can't rebond, we are going to be in receivership. And I think that's the reason that they don't want to really do this. Nobody wants to really let the cat out of the bag on how bad we are financially.
It's one of those buried secrets, huh? And that's, you know, that's scary, that the people of Fall River can't find out, and the people who are in charge are afraid to find out. And, you know, what do you do? How can you change this mentality? The mentality is changed by you, the people of Fall River. You've got to change the mentality. You've got to make sure that your elected officials are held responsible. And we can have, you know, Councilor Rigo and Councilor Pereira coming to bat for us all the time and asking the tough questions and making sure that we hold the administration's feet to the fire. But then you have the other side of the coin, where you've got Councilor Camara shutting down the questions and saying we're not going to go there and we can't talk about it. I mean, Councilor Camara was elected by you. He was elected by me. I mean, so, you know, what do you got? Why do you have to keep putting the walls up around the mayor? What really are we gaining? I know what we're losing. We're losing Fall River. And for those of you who didn't realize it, Fall River is listed as one of the top most miserable cities to be in the country. What a claim to fame that is, isn't it? 156 out of 200. We are the 156th most miserable city, with 200 being the top city. Isn't that nice?
Well, I mean, you know, we have many dubious distinctions when it comes to heroin use and crime and things, and that's one of the problems, as I said. There has to be a change. There has to be a commitment, and the first commitment is by electing political people to represent you, whose mission is to turn the city around, by investing in public safety, by knowing where your tax dollars are spent. And the fact is that I'm tired of the city council saying that this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong, and then voting for a budget. The reality is only 2 people didn't vote for last year's budget. And I said that budget was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. It's been proven. That budget was severely underestimated. The fact is that all it was a facade, and it wasn't sustainable, as they said it was. And now we find out, when all these bills come due in the next fiscal year, all of a sudden we have a catastrophe on our hands. The fact is that the people that we elect, their first priority would be to tell the mayor, you come down with a workable budget, you come down with a budget that allocates the funds where they need to be allocated, and you cut where we have fat. Otherwise, we're not going to approve a budget, period.
And I agree with that. I agree with that totally. And, you know, just real quickly, looking at the other side of the coin, which was the school department, school committee member Panchley came out and said, you know, I'm new to the committee, but I want to stay as chairman of the finance committee, which makes no sense. She's chairman of the finance committee. We're seeing how the control was laid out here. I want to be involved in this because I want to be sure, because if we're not net funded this year, we have to be net funded next year. Otherwise, the state steps in. This is something you need to realize, people. The state will step in. They will force us to net fund. The Department of Revenue will not certify our tax rate, which means we can't collect taxes, and they will cut the Chapter 70 money, which means the school department will get less money. Do you realize that your school department is funded by the state 80 cents on the dollar? 80 cents on the dollar. We get welfare for our school department too. I mean, it's amazing. We don't fund anything. And then the school committee has the audacity to say that we are not committed to educating our children. And they're upset that another charter school is opening, so $5 million of money is got to go to the charter school. Well, if the charter school has that many students, you're not servicing them, so why should your budget include them? That's not how we work it here, is it? So we have to look at our budgets, both citywide, school committee, and our enterprise funds, and we have to say, where is the fat? And I can cut fat right here, right now, real fast, probably save us $1 million, okay? Every single department that has a consultant of any type, terminate the consultant. Bye-bye. If your department head cannot do their job, and I'm going to quote one department head, the department's regulations are changing so rapidly, I can't keep up with them. This is the same department that keeps raising fees and more fees and more fees and is showing more and more of a deficit, okay? Because the regulations are so much, he can't keep up with them. That's a problem. If you can't do the job, retire. Let's get somebody who can. If you can't do your job without consultants, retire. We'll find somebody who can. We'll hire one of the consultants, because obviously they were important enough to bring on. This is what's important to Fall River. We're individuals, but you know what? As a group of people, we make a formidable team. And it's time for that team to form. The people need to come together and say to the city, we're done. We're done. My bank book check is empty. There's nothing left in the checking account to write you. You take enough from me and I get nothing. Now it's time for you to stop putting away some of your friends and telling them, I'm sorry, we can't afford to keep you. Because that's the way it's got to happen. And if I'm wrong, please call me up. Let me know. Let me know. I want to hear it because I want to know how we can afford all these wants, because that's all this meeting was on Monday. It was everybody's want list, not need list, want list. And there's a difference between wants and needs. Needs we can't live without. Wants are wonderful things to have. So remember that. It's been a great time today having this discussion. It was actually a much different show, and I appreciated that. It was kind of nice to not be all wound up in the emotion of the situation and just being very factual.
Well, yeah, I think we were fairly objective,
Yeah.
and the fact is, the school department is a giant vacuum cleaner that sucks money out, and the reality is that most of the money isn't allocated toward education. They say we're not committed yet. The fact is that school teachers have a fairly low entry salary, but we have $100,000 a year deans of students and principals and assistant students walking around, one of the highest administrator to teacher ratios in the state, and we're not really spending our money, the money we do have, on the people who actually deliver the education. So it's time, as we say, let's look at these things, let's fix them. The only way we fix them is by voting them out.
That's it, and making sure that we have enough to do. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you watching, and we appreciate your suggestions. Have a great day.